So, a bit of background to this talk. I've been in IT for 25 years. I'm old and grey and miserable and get off my lawn. For about 8 of those, from 2002 to the end of 2009, I was with ThoughtWorks, which are, they are now, they're still a global company. Every time I look, there's another 1,000 ThoughtWorkers. I think we're up to about 4,000 now. They're kind of taken over the world. But back then, there were much fewer. But these guys were real pioneers of Agile methods, and particularly bringing Agile methods into large organizations. So lots of people were doing little bits of Agile. ThoughtWorks took it much more seriously and said, we're going to show our large clients how we're going to do stuff. So I was there until about end of 2009. 2010, I left. I've been there 8 years. It's time to do something different. And I joined a very small team in a trading firm. And the trading firm is headquartered here in Chicago. I was working in their London office. So this is a bit of a sort of homecoming for this talk, because a lot of the patterns that I'm going to talk about, I started observing there, and then I started teaching them, and I started noticing them in other places as well. So while I was at the trading firm, I was working in a really, really weirdly high-performing team. Like, there were 3 people when I joined. I was number 3. At its peak, I think there were about 7 people in the team. So it was never a huge team. But they were delivering software more effectively and more quickly than any other team I've ever seen, let alone worked in. And there's some weird things coming up on the monitor screen down here. It's that AV person. I'm getting some tweets and things rather than that, so just thought you'd like to know. You should see this screen. It's brilliant. It's got little piles of poo that say microservices on. It's fantastic. If you haven't seen that slide is worth looking for. I'm no longer going to be distracted by that. So anyway, I started, I figured either this is a fluke, right? And it's like, you have to have Kent Beck in the room. For me, it's a chap called Joe Walms, who's my favorite programmer. I know lots of programmers. He's the best programmer I know. And when he's in a team, things just work a lot better. And so I figured maybe that's the secret, is have Joe in a team. But then I realized this team was doing things that I figured I could maybe articulate, maybe share, maybe name as patterns, and maybe get other people doing as well. So that's what I've spent about the last 5 years kind of obsessing about. And so this talk is the subset of those that is about how teams work and team dynamics. As I usually do, I've got way too much stuff to fit into the 50 minutes I've got, so I thought I'd start by rambling for 5 minutes and see where that gets me. So first, a word of caution. Okay, I'm talking about effective teams. Okay, I'm not talking about productive teams. Productive is a massive red herring. Productive comes from the Latin prodere, to make, and it is the root of production, product, productivity, and productive. And what it means is the ability to make lots of a thing. Okay, so productive, if I have a more productive system, it produces more stuff. The goal of software development is not to produce stuff. The goal of software development is to impact a business in some way, hopefully positively, right? That's what we're about. We're not about writing software. We're about solving business problems. So effective teams manage to solve gnarly business problems with tiny, tiny bits of software. If you can solve gnarly business problems with no software, you win at software, okay? That's how software works. So I do not want productive teams. I do not want productive engineers, yeah? What I want is people who are really, really good at understanding the heart of the problem and just solving for that. Okay, I'll pay a lot of money for that. So I want to talk about patterns. I want to lay them out in some sort of form. So I figured I would put them out on a little plane that looks like this, with difficulty on one axis, like how hard is it to become good at this thing, and effectiveness, how much will it help you, on the other axis. Just for a frame of reference, the origin in the bottom left corner starts at quite difficult and quite effective, okay? So what I'm saying by that is this. These patterns are not for beginners, well, some of them anyway, but I would argue that patterns aren't for beginners anyway, okay? Best practices are for beginners. Follow these rules. You'll be fine, okay? Once you start to gain a bit of context, then you start looking at patterns. So does anybody know what that image in the background is? Anyone take a guess where that's from? It's a map. It is a map. What's it a map of? It's a map from the original print of Treasure Island. I figured it was a really, really nice idea to have in the back, because there's little bits of gold in here, I think. So there's a little backdrop for you. So okay, the first pattern I want to talk about then is a thing I call Dreyfus squared. So in order to talk about Dreyfus squared, I need to first of all talk about the Dreyfus model. So there are many, many models of learning, of skills acquisitions. There's Shuhari, there's conscious competence and all that stuff. Dreyfus model starts with two brothers, Hubert and Stuart Dreyfus, in the 70s. And one of them's a systems analyst, back when we had those things, and the other one's a philosopher, so you can imagine them at a dinner party. And they got together one day and they said, wouldn't it be cool if you could program a computer to learn stuff? So like you could program a computer to learn chess. And they said they didn't want to program a chess-playing computer. That already existed. They said they wanted to program a computer to learn, and chess was a sufficiently interesting problem because the rules aren't very hard, but it's really, really hard to be good at. Okay? So they said, this is great. Let's just go find out how learning works, and then we'll code it up. And they went off and looked at how, and it turns out no one knew how learning worked. Yeah? So being early pioneers in technology, they started shaving yaks, and they did their own research. And at the back of this research, mostly looking at airline pilots and how airline pilots acquire skills, they identified 5 levels of skills acquisition, 5 levels of capability you go through on your way to deeply, deeply learning a skill. And so here they are. At the first level, you're a novice, so you just need rules. Okay? Don't tell me any of the background, just tell me what to do. I'm learning tennis, and all I need to know is that I hit the round thing with the stick thing. Okay? And this round thing, oh, missed it. Okay, no, and no. Yes! I rule at tennis. Okay? There is no point at this stage telling me where my footing is, telling me about topspin or balance or how to use the court. That will just overwhelm me. Okay? I want to hit the round thing with the stick thing a bunch of times. And so then I do that a bunch of times, and I start getting a bit better at hitting the round thing with the stick thing. And so I now move on, and I'm now what's called an advanced beginner. So an advanced beginner is where you understand the rules, and you're trying to figure out why those are the rules. So many, many years ago, I used to do jiu-jitsu, martial art, and jiu-jitsu has lots of tiny little economic moves in it. So my favorite jiu-jitsu move, I'll show you it, is this. This is the entire thing. Okay? That, right, is called kukanagi. It means air technique. Okay? So that is how you defend yourself when someone is swinging a chain at you. We don't teach that to beginners. Okay? And what it does is actually this, as the chain's coming round, there's a lovely point of momentum just here. And so you put your hands either side of the shoulder, and you use it as a pivot. So I'm doing that. The person is moving in a big arc like that, and they land like a sack of sand, and the chain lands neatly next to them. Okay? You don't learn that straight away. Right? But these are this is what Jitsu's got in it. Apart from blocking, Jitsu's blocking is these big circular movements like this. And I just thought, that seems really inefficient. So I'm going to do little blocking movements. So I did little blocking movements, got smacked in the head, and that's how I learned that you do big movements. Okay? So advanced beginner, you're testing the rules, you're breaking the rules, you're seeing what happens at the edges. Now you start to internalize the rules, and you become what's called competent. And at a competent level, you can now apply the rules to achieve a goal. So I don't need to tell you to take the tea bags out and heat the kettle and whatever. I can just tell you, I can ask you for a cup of tea. Could you make me a cup of tea, please? And you say, certainly, would you like milk? Would you like sugar? How strong do you like it? Because those are basically the 3 variables. Okay? And so, because you understand how to apply rules, that is as far as most people get with most skills. If you then decide that you want to particularly invest in a skill, you start moving towards the next level, which is proficient. So proficient is now where you've really internalized the rules, and the solutions start to appear fully formed in your head. You start having instinct and insight and intuition and lots of other things that start with in. Okay? But you don't trust it yet, so you kind of fall back on the rules. Right? And so you're still learning whether to trust your instinct. And then eventually, again, you nerd out about this thing. And so maybe proficient in terms of tea making is I start studying different kinds of tea and different tea making techniques. And I learn about how tea's made. And that if you pick the leaves, the buds at different points during the age of the whatever, I don't know, I'm not a tea nerd. Okay? I'm faking it. But eventually you become an expert. And as an expert, transcends the rules. And this isn't in some pretentious hand-wavy way. This is they literally no longer think in rules. Now, bear in mind, these guys came up with this model in the 70s, so like 40 years ago or something. Recent neuroscience is backing this up. There's a thing, you've got live MRI scanning now, so you can watch someone's brain activity in real time, which is kind of cool. And one of the recent studies that I've heard about was studying chess players as they're playing chess. So when you play, so the idea that the theory was that chess grandmaster just understands how to process chess much better than you do. And they don't. They play differently. So the way a chess grandmaster plays chess is they look at the board, the part of their brain that's to do with recall fires up briefly, so that's them remembering games that are similar to this, so they're falling back on their context, and then the kind of the logical processing part. So now they're scanning like this, they're scanning that space and they're figuring out what to do for their move. Meanwhile, the not expert chess player, the intermediate chess player, that part is really busy, so they're scanning a much bigger space. So not only is this chess grandmaster going to beat you, they're going to apply less effort doing it. How annoying is that, right? So expert transcends rule. I got really excited about this model because it's based on science, and I like things that are based on science, but also it tells me something about how I can help people progress, or how people can help themselves progress. In the context of teams then, so this is the Dreyfus model. Dreyfus squared says this. It says, imagine you laid these things out as a table. You don't have to imagine. I've laid it out as a table for you. That's handy, isn't it? And so then we look at what happens when we pair up people in a team. So the new person joins the team, and what do we tend to do with the new person when they join the team? We either give them a pile of stuff to read, right, if we don't like them, yeah? Or normally what we do is we pair them up with the expert. And we say, okay, so that's great. So we're going to pair you up and we're going to bring you up to speed. So what happens when we pair a novice with an expert? What do you think happens? The novice could get overwhelmed, yeah. Well, remember, the expert doesn't think in rules anymore. It's not that they're choosing not to, they don't know how to. Okay? So what happens when you pair a novice with an expert is someone dies. Okay? Now, we don't know which yet, right? Either the novice is grabbing the expert by the throat and saying, tell me what to do. Or the expert is saying, if you ask me one more dumb question, I'm going to kill you, okay? It doesn't end well. Now remember, and I'll keep saying this, and you'll keep forgetting it, but that's okay, I'll keep saying it. Dreyfus model is about skills, not about people. So you will have a portfolio of skills. Some of them you will be a novice at, some of them you'll be competent, some of them you may be an expert in, and that will be different from someone else's portfolio of skills. So really what this is an overlaying model. So when we're thinking about pairing people up and watching people work, this jumps out for me in terms of seeing the kinds of disconnects I get in communication in teams. Okay? What about when I pair up two advanced beginners? What happens then? Sorry? Lots of rule breaking. Mayhem occurs. It's fantastic, right? There's this huge, busy learning stuff, right? So it's a really real hotbed of, like, what happens if you try this, and this, and this? So it's a super productive time. Do not put any of that into production. Okay? Unless you have a sensible adult around to help shepherd this stuff. It's a fantastic way to get people learning. Okay, let's look at a couple more. What about when I pair a novice and someone competent in that skill? How does that work? That works really well. So at the competent level, I'm not aware of things like insight and intuition and all those kind of things. I'm still thinking in rules, but I'm really good at rules. At the competent level is typically where people write, the rule books and the best practices and the blueprints and all that stuff, because they think the best way to help people is with rules. What Dreyfus brothers realized is the one thing not to do with someone who's an advanced beginner is to try and help them not make all the mistakes everyone else makes, because making mistakes that everyone else makes is how you learn, right? It's the process of learning. But yeah, so pairing a novice with competent, that's brilliant. So when you get brand new people or someone who's brand new to a domain or an application or a language or whatever else it is, pair them up with someone who's okay at it, but still looking up a load of stuff themselves, right? They're goal-oriented and they understand the rules themselves because they will understand the pain that the new person's going through, and they will also be able to speak in a language that resonates. And the last one I want to look at very briefly. What about when I pair proficient with expert? What does that look like? Builds confidence. I think this is one of the most powerful pairings. So remember, at the proficient stage, or on your way to proficient, you've made a choice to invest in a thing, okay? I want to go beyond being a competent JavaScript programmer. I want to go beyond being a competent distributed systems engineer. I want to really understand how that stuff works. So I'm expressing an investment, an intent. And then I work with an expert who's done that journey. Yeah, and who's super excited about it. And so now what you have is this, come, Padawan, let us spend time, right? And you go, oh, teach me the ways. And it's brilliant, so you can completely nerd out on things. So why this pattern? I find this pattern super useful for, and again, I teach this in teams. So rather than me saying, oh, you guys should pair together, it's let's understand how learning works. Let's understand how those different levels of skill are likely to collide with each other, okay? And then that means that we can start self-selecting into pairings for specific situations that are most likely to be productive, that are most likely to be valuable. So a bit of meta stuff. Understanding the Dreyfus Model is a skill. Oh, so now you're all novice Dreyfus modelers, okay? Or those of you who hadn't come across this before. What will happen then is you'll become an advanced beginner and you'll go, this is great, and you'll start applying it everywhere and annoying the crap out of people, and then eventually you'll figure out where it works, and then you'll start to get some balance, yeah? And then, you know, the further stages there are like, what other learning models are there, and how else can we help people interact with each other? So, Dreyfus squared then. Next pattern I want to look at, shallow silos. This is an example of a whole class of things. So this isn't necessarily go do this, it'll work. But this is a thing that I noticed happening in, as I say, this insanely high-performing team. There were about 6 of us by this point. And the thing I'd always, the mantra I'd heard from Agile land is, pair on everything, right? I'm a huge, huge fan of pair programming, or pair anything, really, pair testing, pair analysis. And they said, pair promiscuously. You should rotate pairs, okay? So you should pair on lots of different things. And that way it reduces your truck factor, the number of people that need to be run over by a truck. I heard recently of a thing called the inverse truck factor. The inverse truck factor is the number of people in your team that need to get run over before we can get any work done. Most teams have a non-zero truck factor, has been my experience. Okay, so I'm in this team. And what we noticed was this, is as a team, we were super, super effective. We were able to iterate on ideas very quickly. We had fantastic rapport and communication with the traders. We were building trading systems. We were embedded in with the traders. And, but what would happen is people had different propensities. So there were a couple of people who were really into the domain of trading. And what does it mean to write effective algorithms and all that kind of stuff. There were people who are like me. I'm really into how things connect up. So almost like, it didn't need to be a trading firm. It could have been a healthcare firm or a retail firm. I care about systems integration and wiring things up and having messages flowing around the place and all that kind of thing. And then you get people who nerd out on user experience and usability. And so what we had was a very complicated technology trading stack with lots of bits in it. And people tended to kind of prefer different areas. And so the order management system in a trading stack, I won't go into it, but it's a very, very complicated bit of software. It's quite simple to describe, but there's enormously complex emergent behavior in it. I tried building an OMS, an order management system, a couple of times. My head exploded, and then I got someone else. My head didn't explode anymore, which is great. I then learned there are some things I shouldn't try to do. So, but what we found is that essentially in the team, the 6 people tended to fall into 3 pairs that were focused on different areas. And we said, oh, we should rotate people. So we started rotating people, and what happened when you rotate people is people just go, I mean, I can do this stuff. I'm not that interested in it. I'd rather do that thing over there. And when you get people who are doing work that's like, the work that comes out is a bit, okay? It projects, okay? It's a transference thing. And so if you get someone working on something that they're really excited about, they tend to get something really good out the other end. So we said, let's not overthink this. What we'll do is we'll stay in our, effectively, silos, right? So there's these two are the expert in here, and these two are the expert in this thing, and these two are the expert in this thing. But as a team, we would have stand-ups. We actually had 2 stand-ups every day. I'm going to talk about stand-ups in a minute. We'd have 2 stand-ups every day. And what would happen is, so the silo was only about this high, okay, up to count to your knees. So we'd be in our silo, and then we'd come out of our silo and come and have a team, stand up, and then we'd go back into our little silo and then do work. And that turned out to work really well. So shallow silos is an example of a different kind of team setup in terms of how we allocate work and how we manage work and how we consume work. Is a lot of, and particularly in the Agile space I see this, and I don't know why, things are presented as binary. You're using story points, you're not using story points. You're doing estimating, you're not doing estimating. So this no estimates thing is like, it's like binary, estimates, no estimates. Those are your 2 choices. Whereas generally a lot of these things are much more nuanced. And so the way we allocate and consume work in a team is much more nuanced than, well, we're pairing and we're rotating and we have pair stairs and whatever else, or people take individual work and then they're allocated into silos. Yeah? So shallow silos, an example of somewhere along that spectrum. There are many others, and I could go into a few of them today, but I've got lots more I want to talk about. So just bear in mind, if you're in a team and you're thinking, well, some people really love doing web development, okay? Do you know what? Set them up so they can do excellent web development, give them all the support they need. As long as more than one person knows a thing, then people can take vacation safely, people can rotate in and out of the team, that's okay, right? So I'm obsessive about pairing, but I'm much, much more relaxed now about sort of rotating people through different kinds of work. So that's looking at a specific team. Now let's look at interactions between teams. So one of the challenges we had at the trading firm, I was in this team for about a year, and after about a year, I changed role. So I switched into a mode where I was now pairing with the CIO on essentially an org change journey. It took about a year and a half, and it was a really, really, really fun time. And he's here, so I've got to be very careful what I say, because he's close enough to throw things. So no, one of the things we found we were really struggling with was people were basically working in vertical areas. So what happened before was like there was just no control, if you like. So there were kind of fires everywhere. And so he'd come in, he'd said, right, we're going to need a head of networking, a head of infrastructure, a head of data center. There's going to be a bunch of heads of things so that then there's going to be responsibility and accountability. And all the fires went out. It was brilliant, right? That's the right thing to do. But then we've got the problem that now everything is handoffs, and so now how do we make work flow through the organization? So we went from no structure to structure, and now we wanted to get more kind of lean. So we said, okay, how should delivery teams, so a team that's building a product, or building a trading system, how should they interact with network specialists, right, network engineers? And we sort of thought, well, we could do these cross-functional teams, and when you're working at that kind of level, you have network engineers who have literally all they've done for 20 years is nerded out on different switches, right? They can tell you everything about every rev of every upgrade of every make of switch that they've ever seen, and they can tell you about, oh, I learned some mad stuff. Store and forward versus pass-through. So this is as the bytes for a packet arrive at a switch, do you wait until you've got the whole packet and then send it on its way, which means you get more reliable packets, because if you get a partial packet, you don't then send it on. Or do you send it through a byte at a time as you get it, because that means you get faster throughput, lower latency, but if you get a fragmented packet, so does everyone else, yeah? Neither one of those is right. As Martin says, it depends. Yeah? There's different cases for different situations. And I learned all this stuff working with these network guys. Ask one of these network guys if they want to build a web page. No. Ask one of these network guys what they think about CSS. Yeah. That's their CSS care face, right? And so it doesn't work just saying let's build cross-functional teams. So I stole a model that I'd seen as a company called Object Mentor about 100 years ago, early Agile, very early Agile pioneers. And they've got some great alumni. They've got folks like Michael Feathers and Bob Martin's work there. And they had a coaching model where they would have individual coaches would be on assignments, but they typically went out individually. But they would be buddied up with someone who wasn't there, okay, just to keep them sane. So they'd check in with them every week or so, and how are you doing? And they called it near coaching and far coaching. So the near coach is embedded in the team, the far coach is a little bit away. And it wasn't a senior-junior thing. You know, you could reasonably be each other's near and far coaches, yeah? But what it meant was that you had someone with a different perspective. And I thought this was a really powerful model. So we started doing something like this. So for those specialist teams, and we didn't call them expert teams because everyone's experts at various different things, ergo Dreyfus, right? But these were specialists in things like infrastructure, data center, DBAs, whatever it might be. And within those little groups, and they're only little groups, maybe 4 or 5 of each, you had the kinds of people who loved being in teams and helping a team build a product, and the kind of people who loved just nerding out in their discipline. Right? So their DBA, their lead DBA, had literally written books about Oracle DBAing. Yeah, she was awesome. And so we started building this model where you would have embedded people in the teams, and they would have a kind of, like, there'd be like a mothership they'd go back to, and the mothership's job was to stay current and to learn stuff and to be ahead of the game. And the guys embedded in the teams, their job was to implement those ideas for the particular people. But there was like a secondary role, which is they were coaching the teams. So if I needed some, say, network expertise, we'd get one of the roving network people would come and sit in our team, and they'd be connected back to the gang of hardcore networking people. And they would be teaching us what we needed as they were doing it. So again, pairing, right? And so as they're teaching and we're doing it, our team is now learning enough about networking to be dangerous, yeah? And that meant that next time we needed them slightly less. So they're raising the bar across all of these different disciplines and skills. So as I say, you know, DBAs, right? Tuning a database is something you don't need until you need it, and then you really need it a lot, and then you don't need it again for ages. It doesn't make sense to have an embedded DBA in a team. So we ended up with this model where people would kind of start so they were in like a core team, and then they'd go out on assignments to different teams and help out, and then they'd come back and share knowledge that way, which we found super useful. This was, warm welcome was, and this is something you can all do tomorrow. Well, not tomorrow, you'll be here, right? But you can all do very, very easily. Sometimes the barrier to this is organizational stuff. In fact, most often the barrier to this is organizational stuff. A warm welcome is this. When someone joins the team, that is your one and only time to make, one and only opportunity to make a good first impression, okay? So what was your first impression like when you joined the team or when you joined the company? You know, you rocked up and they weren't expecting you. You rocked up and you didn't have a desk. You rocked up and it took you, 10 days before you could even log in, right? So a warm welcome is this, is really, really, it's not hard, really, really caring about the fact that someone's about to join a team, or more importantly, someone's about to join an organization, and laying out the red carpet, making them feel really, really special, like you actually want them to be there, okay? This is not a difficult thing to do. So my example of this was a couple of weeks before I joined this company. I got a phone call saying, oh, you're joining in a couple of weeks. Yes, I am. What laptop do you want? Oh, no one's ever asked me that. What can I have? No, what laptop do you want? Anything, right? You name a laptop and we're going, oh, not ready for this question. And we chatted a bit and I ended up asking for I thought it was a pretty spiffy laptop. And anyway, so I turned up on day one and there's my laptop on my desk and there is a unbelievably kick-ass state-of-the-art developer workstation as well, 2 massive screens. And there was my login and my password on a post-it on the desk. And they said, okay, so go, right? So I logged in, and up comes my mail client, and in my inbox I've got one email. It says, welcome. And I click on it, and there's a link to a wiki page, and I click on the link to the wiki page, and it says, welcome, Dan. It says, here's some things you're probably going to want to do on day one. And it's a list of things. And most of the list was people I was going to need to meet. You're going to need to meet this lady because she deals with holidays. You're going to need to meet this guy because he does desktop support. And these are some people, some traders that you're going to want to talk to. And as I'm going down, one of the things was, if these things seem like they're in the wrong order, change the order. Oh, okay, yeah, I can do that. It's a wiki page. And then the very last thing said, find out who's joining next and change the name at the top. Right? So now the next guy in was a chap called Neil. And so he came in on his day one. It says, welcome, Neil. And it says, last updated by Dan. So now he knows who the most recent person was. Right, really, this costs nothing. This costs exactly nothing to build. yeah? I felt so welcomed. And so once you feel that, you want to pay that forward. And it's a very, very, like I say, look at this. It's so not difficult at all, and it's superbly effective. Yeah? It makes a massive impact because now everyone in that team has been welcomed in that way. There's a corresponding pattern about when someone leaves the team. You know, have a fond farewell. Right? It's not, oh, he's going, oh, bye then. Bye, Martin. Thanks for coming. Oh, it was great. It's like, you know, let's celebrate, you know, the work you've done and what you've contributed, and let's wish you well on your next thing, and all that kind of stuff, okay? Very important. Who here has a stand-up? Who does stand-ups? Most of the hands in the room. Okay, whose stand-up looks like this? Yesterday I did this, today I'm doing this, I haven't got any blockers. Yesterday I did this, today I'm doing this, I haven't got any blockers. Yesterday I did... Yeah, about half the hands. Okay, so I think we've largely missed the point of stand-ups. So stand-ups generally, they became, and again, it's looking at the history, right? So the history of stand-ups is this, is we used to have steering, okay? Back in the days when I would spend, you know, I'm going to do a release every 18 months, whether I need to or not, yeah? And we'd probably have monthly steering, and in that monthly steering, we'd all beat each other up or whatever you do over monthly steering. And then people like Martin DeVos are saying, okay, we're going to start releasing things in 12 weeks, right? Not 12 months, 12 weeks. We're going to release something in 12 weeks, and we're not going to fly blind for 12 weeks. We're going to sprint to halfway, 6 weeks, and we're going to sprint for another 6 weeks, and then we're going to, and that's where the idea of sprints came from, was it was 6 weeks of work. And the goal was to be able to release once a season. Okay, that was considered impossible. This is in the 90s. And so what's happening is this, is I've got this 6-week period where I have to have something to show at the end of it. Well, if we still do our monthly steering, then I'm probably going to have one. If I'm lucky, I'll get 2 of those in that 6 weeks. That's a bit rubbish, right? What if I did weekly steering? Well, even then, that's 6 data points over my 6-week period. So what I probably want to do is go to almost daily steering. So that's what your stand-up is. It's a coordination exercise at the beginning of the day. So the coaching I give, or the advice I give teams, and the advice I try and use myself is this, is think of the huddle, if you like, the stand-up. It's like in a game of American football, or we're here, so I can just say football, right? So you have 4 downs, okay? You have 4 goes to get 10 yards, right? And for each of those, ahead of each of those goes, we all huddle, and we have a conversation. And the conversation is literally, what are we going to do for the next down? Because as soon as we do the next down, we'll have another conversation, yeah? It's a very, very short-term planning exercise. But, oh, yeah, how's the missus? Really? Oh, okay, nice. And the kids at school? Yeah, great, brilliant. No. And it's not, okay, just in that last thing, you passed really badly. I think you should know that, okay? And I'm going to measure your passing. No, it's not. It's right. We need to go forward. And how are we going to do that? Yeah? We don't use this for beating each other up. We don't use this for status. It's not a serial status meeting. It's a guiding meeting. So one of my favorite movies, Dead Poets Society. So Robin Williams, between like amazing and really schmaltzy, and this is I think this is him amazing. And he's a teacher in a school, and he's a really unconventional teacher because it's a very, very stiff, boring school, and he's this outrageous character. And so and he gets all his pupils, all these boys, and he says, right, boys, you need to carpe diem. You need to seize the day. Okay, every single day, treat every single day like it's your last day. It's going to be an amazing, amazing experience. So seize the day is how I do stand-ups. So literally, all we do, we get together and we're asking ourselves this one question. What is the best possible today we can have? Okay, that's the whole thing. What's the best possible today we can have? Do you have any news that might make my day better or different, right? Well, actually, do you know, I set up another build survey yesterday, so the build should start going a bit faster, but you might start getting emails from a different host, but don't worry about it. I'm going to be moving them all around during the day. So that's useful news. That helps me plan my day better. But literally, the entire point of the stand-up is what's the best possible today we can have. Well, then where does status happen? Okay, status happens by the team caring about status happening. So one of my favorite team leads that I've worked with, a guy called Ivan Moore, he gained the nickname T-Boy, but it's T-BOI, like a skater name, right? Because he's cool. He's not cool. He's really not. He's the least tea-boy person you've ever seen. However, what he would do is this, is every afternoon, he would wander around and he had a little post-it and he'd come by and he'd say, oh, hey, I know, can I get you a cup of tea? I said, yeah, please, that'd be lovely. Yeah, okay. What would you like? A cup of tea, or maybe milk? Yep, sure. How are you getting on? Oh, I'm just... And what he's actually doing when he's going around from desk to desk is this. Yes, sure, he's taking the tea orders. He's also checking in on everybody. That's where he picks up status, okay? So it's less efficient for him, but much more effective for the team. Because now I'm seeing someone where they are, you know. If Martin's having a crappy day, he's not going to come to the stand-up and go, I'm having a crappy day. But I'll sense it, right? I'll go to where he's sitting, and he's clearly down, right? He's clearly not his normal, energized, bubbly self. And so, you know, and I'm aware of that. I can read that without even having any words. But then I can say, what are you up to? Oh, I'm struggling with this thing. Okay, well then now I know that that's a thing that's being struggled with, okay? So what he would do then, he goes around, and of course then he brings the tea, otherwise it only works once, yeah? and so each day he'd come and bring the tea, and then so he would start the stand-up with this. I mean, it was always against the board, so you know the wall, because then that's where the work is. So we don't do status of people, right? I'm not your mum and I'm not a policeman, so that's okay. I trust that you're going to do good work. We hire smart people and we trust them. What we're looking at is which work is moving. And so he would start the stand-up with, and it was never more than 2 minutes, complete update on the state of the world. And so now the whole team is like, right, we know exactly where we are. And this was quite a big team. This was about 10 people, I think. And within 2 minutes, everyone knew where everyone was. So that was, the meta message there was, I don't care about status. Or rather, you don't need to now report status. Let's now have a stand-up about where we want to go today. And it was a really powerful thing. I think Ken Schwaber is being misunderstood. I don't have data for this, but I have a sense of this. So these 3 questions, what did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? And are you blocked? Right? These are the 3 standard stand-up questions. Right? Who's using those sorts of questions? Those kind of questions? Yeah, loads of people. Okay. Unfortunately, you are totally missing the point. I do apologize. The questions are this. What work items moved yesterday? What work items are likely to move today? What work items are blocked? People are never blocked, right? If in doubt, context switch. If you're worried about which context to switch between, have a meeting, right? You lonely at work? Have more meetings, yeah? So people don't get blocked. Work gets blocked. And so Don Reinertson talks about this. He says, you don't measure the workers, you measure the work items. We're measuring the flow of work through a system. And so the reason to ask what work moved yesterday is I want all the work to be flowing through the system. And so if there's things that we thought were work in process, but you know what, they're not being worked on, yeah, then they're not work in process, they're blocked, stuck work. That's just ticking away, the clock's ticking, which we should probably be aware of as a team, because now we're making commitments that we can't follow through on. We're saying, yeah, we're going to do this, it's going to be fine. So what work moved yesterday? What work should I expect to see moving today? Because if it isn't, that's signal, and we can go after that. And what work is blocked, because now we can go away and start unblocking things. So, who likes code reviews? Oh, a few hands. Who does code reviews? Lots more hands. So from that, I surmise that we're doing a lot of code reviews and not actually having much fun. So I used to be of the opinion that if you're doing pairing and you're pairing well, you're pairing effectively, that you don't really need code reviews because the code quality kind of looks after itself. I have changed that opinion. I think code reviews provide a substantively different thing from just the rigor and discipline you get from pairing. So I've introduced this term code critique, mostly because it's a different word. So like knowledge crunching that Eric Evans uses is basically analysis. But when you say analysis, everyone goes, ugh. When you say code review, everyone goes, ugh. So code critique is like, think like a film critic. You know, they're going to describe a movie, and if you like the kind of movies they like, and they like this movie, you'll probably like it too. It's that kind of thing. So code critique, we started doing this, and again, this happened at the trading firm one day. This just happened, and it just stuck with me. It really, really resonated. There was a bunch of people who'd been doing work, and it's still only a small team, but a small team can cover a lot of ground very quickly when they're allowed to. And this chap, Neil, who was a team lead at this point, he used to watch the Git commits going in. He'd watch he had a little thing that would pop up in his window that would show the Git commits. He wasn't policing people, he was just curious. Okay? And what he's looking for is patterns in there. And so one day he noticed that 3 of us had been working on what was ostensibly similar stuff and hadn't noticed. Even though we're having like loads of stand-ups and loads of coordination, it's still possible for things to fall through the cracks. And he said, we're doing the same thing in different places. Let's look at all of them as a team and see what we think. So we got a projector and we put all of them up, one after the other. And it wasn't this is good or this is bad. It was what are the trade-offs with, solution 1, solution 2, solution 3. Why did you choose that? What choices did you make? What things did you discard? I can see the code. I can review code really easily just by looking at the code. What I can't see when I look at code is the code that isn't there, right? What I can't see is that Adrian went through 5 different ideas before this one, okay? And this is the one that's under version control, and that's great. But he's sketching with code, and if I want to learn to program like he does, I miss that. And so what we did is we put them up one at a time, and we decided that actually one of them worked really, really well for sketching things, for doing things quickly, but it had some odd behavioral characteristics, so don't stress it. And one of them was really, really robust, but probably took a bit more work, so don't use that for sketching because you can't sketch as fast. Yeah? And so we learned different things. And what that does is it creates across the team idioms. Okay? So idioms they're a language construct. An idiom is a turn of phrase that happens to be there, okay? But it's one that we all choose means the same thing. Let me give an example. My favorite idiom is if you come from Devon in England, there's a word that means someone who doesn't come from Devon, okay? There's a word, grockle, okay? So a grockle, actually what a grockle is anyone who doesn't know what a grockle is, okay? So a grockle is someone who's not from around here. The very neighboring county, Somerset, has a word for someone who's not from around here. And that word is Emmet. Okay? These are both made-up words. There is no etymology to these things, right? So, but the great thing is that, and that's idiomatic. Now, when you get a massive language, like Scala, say, Scala is the least opinionated language in the world. So say, what about code reuse, Scala? And say, well, you've got class-based inheritance, you've got mix-ins, you've got closure over code, over functions. You've got, and it goes, yeah, sure. What do you mean, yeah, sure? Yeah, we do all of those. Okay. What about like, I don't know, something like processing a sequence of values? So processing a sequence of values, we can have a for loop, we can have iterator, we could have functional like MapReduce, we can have recursion. And Scala goes, yeah, we like all of those. And brilliant. So now if I have a code base with more than 4 developers in it, how many of those am I likely to find? Not just all of them, combinations of them. Right? I'm going to get a for loop with an iterator that contains a MapReduce, because why not? Yeah. And so what that means is it becomes really hard. There's high cognitive load looking at different people's code. And so what we need is some sense of what good looks like here, because there's lots and lots of values of good. Something like Clojure is a much more opinionated language. It's Lisp, it's parens, right? That's most of the language, yeah? So when you see idiomatic Clojure, then, most Clojure looks idiomatic, right? Python is a good, there's a word, Pythonic, which means Python code written like Python programmers write. There is no Scala-ic, that's not a coincidence, yeah? And so what you use a code critique for is to create those idioms, to agree what we think good looks like around here. And so then if I see something that isn't that, it's probably for a specific case. So if we decide that we're going to go with, I don't know, MapReduce type functional expressions for working through, for processing sequences, and I find a for loop, the chances are that for loop is doing something low latency, right? Because for loops are faster than folding. I'm making this up, right? That might not be the case. But that could be the case. But the idea is that once we've got this idea of what idiomatic looks like for this code base, when I see something unusual, it's signal. Okay? So a really powerful model for code critique is to have junior people or less experienced people critiquing more experienced people's code. Right? Ooh. There's a couple of reasons for this. They ask really good questions. right? They ask questions like, why did you do that? And their intent with the question, why did you do that, is explain to me why you did that. The effect of them saying, why did you do that, is, oh my goodness. That's a really good question. And they go, oh, is it? Oh, okay, then, that's great. Yeah, no, we should never have done that. Okay. But what it does is it allows these idioms to emerge in a safe environment. Okay. And so again, as a junior in this system or in this application, I can say, oh, Adrian, with your massive brain and your brilliant coding skills, right? You've done this thing that I would never have thought of. Why did you do that? What other things did you discard on the way through that? Because now I can learn to do those things too, and that would be cool. So what's the message here? Use code critiques, use code reviews. They're a really powerful tool. Don't use them to police people, okay? That's an unfair thing to do, and it will create perverse incentives as well, right? And it's also typically what you're doing is critiquing something after the fact, so it's all like sunk cost as well, which is annoying. So use a code critique as a way for the team to align, for the team to agree its idioms, and again, you can start to see these patterns start to combine. You can use code critique as part of a warm welcome. Hey, I know, welcome to the team. We're about to look at some code. Come and look at it with us. You've not seen this application before. You've not seen this code base before. What do you think? What have you learned elsewhere? And so she's bringing her knowledge into that team as well. Last one I want to look at then is a hack day. I'm sure who's had hack days? Yeah, brilliant. Loads of people. These are really good fun. This is not a hackathon. This is not let's throw off all the traces and let's have some. A hack day, though, it's a day where we're not going to do regular day job, but it's a day with a theme. So I heard about these through Google, but a lot of organizations have them. So you'll have a hack day with a theme. So we've had bug crushing days, right? And on bug crushing days, we just go after the bugs, yeah? And we pair up and we go and kill the bugs. Or we might have a hack day around throughput. Let's all just forget what we're doing. We're going to spend an entire day, everyone is going to make this thing faster for any value of faster, okay? So you get the whole team pointing in the same direction, or the whole organization, get a bunch of teams, all pointing in the same direction. It's a super high energized thing and a super fun thing to do. And people think about this, particularly sort of middle senior managers, go, oh, that's wasteful, they're off, they're not doing their regular job. I've only ever seen these things provide enormous, enormous value. So I'm pretty much out of time, I think, or running out of time. So there's a few other patterns that we won't get to today. I have been threatening for the last 5 years to write all these up in a book. There's a Lean Pub book called Software Faster, which has 43 of these in it. The current status is that there are 43 chapters arranged into about 10 sections, one of which is team, which we've been looking at today. For each of the chapters, they have a pattern name, because that's the thing I've really been iterating on. And there's a kind of a paragraph in which, sort of gives you an overview of the pattern. And then a few bullets of like messages from this chapter. And then what I'm doing is going through and filling them out very, very slowly. So we're up to, current status is 7%. So I've done about 4 of them. But it's out there anyway, so have fun with that. I think that's all I wanted to say. So think about these things. Think about your stand-ups. Think about how teams are organized in terms of how they do work, how they pull work, and how they consume work. Think about how best you can get people working on the kinds of things that they get excited about. Because people working on things that they get excited about is the best way to get the best out of those people and the best out of the things they deliver. Think about every single, and what's really weird as well is this word ceremony. So you go, oh, we're doing all these ceremonies. Ceremony is a pejorative term. Ceremony is an insult, right? When you talk about something being ceremonial, it means it has literally no purpose. There is no value to it other than it's a thing you do. And so teams proudly say, we're doing all the Scrum ceremonies. And I'm like, listen to the words you're using. Right? Are you getting value out of planning, or are you just losing a day every 2 weeks and then coming out of there and then 5 minutes later something changes and anyway it doesn't matter, right? Are you doing estimation because someone once said story points, right? Do those things help with decision making? Would you make decisions differently any other way? Are they effective ways of getting stuff done? So challenge every single thing that you have as ceremonies and ask yourself, what's the real intent behind this? Could we change this thing so we really do get that value out of it, that intent out of it? And if not, should we maybe just jettison it? You know, retrospectives are a great way for teams to pause and reflect every now and then. High-performing teams do that in the moment. Okay, they say, do you know what? I've just noticed something. We should blah. Now, I still suggest that you pause on a regular basis. There's like a human cadence. If you just go, 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 people get exhausted. So pause anyway and reflect and celebrate and all those things. But again, every single one of these things, even the things I'm telling you, right? Do not take these things as law or as true. These are things that, these are patterns, which means they may or may not be useful to you, okay? I have seen them be effective in some contexts. I've seen them completely not work in other contexts. So on that non-specific note, ask yourself this. How can your team be more effective? That's your homework question. Right? What thing can you do on Monday? What thing can you do so your team can be more effective? Thank you.